Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the University of Chicago's Center for Middle Eastern Studies, Farouk Mustafa Memorial Lecture. And today we have the pleasure to welcome Professor Amidu Sanni from Fountain University in Osogbo, Nigeria. We're thrilled to have him with us today. I'll like to take a few minutes to, well, a couple of minutes to introduce him, and then I'll let him get to his talk. Professor Sanni is Vice Chancellor of Fountain University, which is the British term for president of a university. He's also professor of African and Middle Eastern Studies. Can you all hear me well? Yeah. Earlier, from 1984 to 2018, he taught at Lagos State University. In terms of his studies, his undergraduate is from the University of Ibadan in Arabic language and literature, and his PhD is from the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. His research interests cover Arabic literature, literary theory, philology, West African manuscript studies, social anthropology, and digital humanities. Professor Sanni has over 250 publications to his credit in English and in Arabic. He published an important monograph titled The Arabic Theory of Prosification and Versification on Hal and Nazm in Arabic Theoretical Discourse, which is right up my alley, and I loved it and assigned it over many years. His PhD dissertation was on the Abbasid theorist Al-Marzubani, on whom he has also published several articles. He has published 10 book chapters and over 50 articles in major journals. And I'll read out a few titles, if I may, to give you a sense of his broad range. So, for example, The West African Manuscript Heritage, Challenges of the Digital Revolution in a Research Economy. From the intellectual powerhouse of Ilorin, is that correct? Nigeria, Elegy in the Work of Adam Abdullah al-Iluri. Another article on Tadmin, enjambment, and structural coherence in classical Arabic poetry. Yet another, Between Sukaina bint al-Hussein and Fadwa Tuqan, Critical Elements in Feminine Poetical and Critical Tradition. In addition, he has published around 150 book reviews and has attended or presented at over 100 conferences. Professor Sanni has won several awards, including the Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship, the Leiden-Scaliger Fellowship. I'm probably mispronouncing all these terms, so sorry about that. And the British Chevening Fellowship. He has been a visiting professor at international universities, including Beirut Universität in Germany and the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies in the UK. Professor Sanni is on the editorial boards of several academic journals, including the Journal of Oriental and African Studies, the Journal of Quranic Studies, and the Journal of the Association of Arab Universities for Research in Higher Education. He has a very long CV. I've tried to give you a quick synopsis, and now let me leave you with the presentation title, which is The Arabic-Islamic Heritage of Sudanic Africa, Old Sources and New Challenges of a Documentary Tradition. We don't often get to hear from outside the Middle East, so this is a treat for us, and we're looking very much forward to your presentation. Please join me in welcoming Professor Sanni. Oh, and if I may, so Professor Sanni will speak for about 40 to 50 minutes, and we'll have time for questions after, and we have reception after that, right?
Thank you very much, Tahira. Well, I want to appreciate everybody here in this hall, the beautiful students and faculties of the University of Chicago. And I want to thank Professor Qutbuddin for facilitating this, and of course, Thomas, Director Orit, and several others. Thank you for bringing me up here. Well, I want to also thank her for this. I feel a bit humbled with this presentation of myself. I was just trying to make some things in the academic world. But until 2 weeks ago, actually, I was the president of Fountain University. I just finished my term about 2 days ago, and I'm now back in the system as a common lecturer and professor in this system. Thank you very much. Well, I want to say that the Center for Middle Eastern Studies of University of Chicago has a tradition that is quite interesting. The Oriental Institute here in University of Chicago, we know that the papyri tradition here at the university has been very long, a long one. And when people talk of Middle Eastern studies, the emphasis is only about Central Middle East, the Arab world. And so I decided to go into area of manuscript studies, of which many people are not quite aware of. Now, so this particular interaction, which is Farouk Mustafa Memorial Lecture, I'm happy that's the last one I'm giving for the month here. And the topic is the Arabic-Islamic heritage of Sudanic Africa. Of course, people don't know that what we call Sudanic Africa is Africa south of the Sahara. And the term is very new in scholarship now. People used to call it sub-Saharan Africa. There's something like sub-Saharan Africa. Anything sub has some pejorative element within it. So countries below below the Sahara is what we now call Sudanic Africa. So now, of course, the landscape, the religious landscape of Africa is a mixture of which you can see that with the colors here, you have the majority Muslim, you have the Muslim separately populated, and of course, area of religious conflict. And again, you also have the minorities Christian area and majority Christian area. But something that binds together the African continent is this diversity of language. There are several languages in Africa. And again, it is quite interesting to know that even as early as the 13th century, 14th century, 15th century, a number of African countries had been used to a sort of writing system that was purely non-European, that was on Latin-based. So, and as I tend to show later on, the Arabic tradition has been known in Africa far as early as 10th century. Of course, when you talk of Africa now, people tend to think only of mainland Africa, but even countries like Morocco, like Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, for that matter, all these are African countries, although Arabic happens to be their first language or maybe a major language, because you feel more comfortable in Tunis today to speak French than Arabic. And they feel more comfortable for you to be in suit in Egypt than to be in the Falahin Jalabia. So it's a problem there. But again, just to show that the diversity and the language. So the linguistic map in Africa is what I've tried to show, that the diversity, notwithstanding, there had been a good culture of literacy there. And of course, we have gone beyond the normal portrayal of Africa as a dark continent, which was the kind of narrative we had in the past. But of course, things have shown that that is not true. Even as recently as some 10, 20 years ago, Jack Goodyear, one of the most important anthropologists of this, was still saying that you can see Africa south of the Sahara was until recently. So he was saying 2010 that until recently, how recent that was, shows that the kind of stereotype about Africa still remains very, very much alive. And but of course, that is no more valid now based on. And I'm very much interested in quoting this thing, which was just accessed a few days ago, that Islamic writers in Africa were producing scholarly manuscripts, while most of Europe was still stuck in the Middle Ages, just to show that the level of scholarship and literacy has been very long in African something. Yes, I also tried to quote what Leo Africanus, who was writing in the 16th century about what he discovered, that if he was saying in 16th century that 900 years ago, that tells you how much the tradition of writing had been established in the African continent. So we cannot be talking of a dark continent in a place whereby writing system. And of course, we don't have to think of literacy only in Latin characters alone. And if you know of the Egyptian hieroglyphics, Ethiopian, something Tifinagh of the Tuaregs. So this had been on and on for quite a long time. So we shouldn't be thinking only in terms of Western values or Western system of writing alone to determine literacy or that. So, and I tried to show that there was an exhibition in the British Library sometimes ago, which I happened to be there. It showed that over 100 objects spanning 5,000 years and 7 continents with some 40 writing systems. So just to show the tradition. So now this is very, very important. John Honwick, who died some 6 years ago, he was at Northwestern University. For over 40 years, he was in the 60s, he came to Nigeria to establish the History and Arabic program. And he discovered that there was some manuscript. So what he planned to be just a list of some manuscript he was able to get, started growing and growing. And you can see now what I've been able to get, just listing the titles of manuscript alone that you now have in Africa. And incidentally, I've been involved in this project. In fact, all the volumes, I've been involved in reviewing all of them, except the last one I just got a few days ago, the Right of the Muslim People of Northeastern Africa. That is the latest one. So you can have to type of 4,565 pages of titles of manuscript alone as at now in Africa. So just to tell you the richness of the materials we have out there, waiting to be explored, waiting to be studied, or waiting to be preserved as well in some cases. Some of them are only left only by name, some are half out of circulation, but just to let you know the kind of richness of materials we have in Africa outside the Middle East. So when you talk of the Middle East as the home of Arabic studies, you can also see that we have quite something enormous. And there's even something that is even missing now, and that is about the East Africa itself, where the Swahili, what we call the Swahili Commonwealth. So the person who was doing the job, Anne Bank from Norway, I've been in constant talk with her, and she said she has been going on and couldn't even know where to stop. So just to tell you the kind of vast material still out there in the Swahili world. So, and that is the thing. Now, I've tried to show you the first and the latest edition of the Honwick something book. That one came out in 1993, the writing of Eastern Sudan, Africa. That is the current Sudan, And the latest one is the one that came out just last year. It's about the writing of most people of Northeastern Africa. That's the Harar, Ethiopia, quite a large number of materials there as well. So just to show you the kind of richness we have there. Then again, there's also an aspect that we have tried to overlook for quite a long time. Beyond the slave trade, from the 13th, 15th, 16th up to 19th century or thereabouts, a large number of Africans were enslaved in the diaspora, so to say, and of course, in America. And this particular thing from Thomas Paramore is quite interesting. And you can see what he was saying about African-born Muslim slaves in America, our beneficiaries of more years of formal education, more widely traveled, and multilingual than their American masters. They engaged in domestic and foreign correspondence and penned memoirs and other compositions. And I've tried to dwell on this in some other studies to show that Africans that were sold to slavery, many of them were princes, many of them were scholars, many of them were authors. And it might interest you to know, as I will show you later, that the first autobiography here in the United States that is still extant today was written by an African from Senegal, Umar Said, and I will talk about that later on, just to show the richness of the African scholarly tradition from the Middle Ages up to now. Now, yes, this particular one you are seeing here is one of the documents that just came alive in 2020 by Einboden. Now, we had some slaves, there were two particular slaves who wrote to the American president in the latter part of the 19th century, complaining of certain things about their treatment, but they wrote the letter to the American president in Arabic. And so this was discovered recently by Einboding in a publication which I've tried to study and also reviewed. And you can see that Ismu Abdul Rahman, so you can see the Arabic written there, of course, in the local script, the writing something there. And that is in the 19th century. That is Africans in the United States establishing their scholarship, not in English language, but of course in Arabic. Yeah, this is the person I was talking about, Omar Said, the author of the first autobiography in the United States in Arabic. And there's a book by Lois and Ernst. They are publishing a book which will appear later this year in August about this Omar Said. Omar Said is a very, very interesting character, and I will advise that you study more about him later on. At a point in time where he was so into slavery, his master bought him a Bible, and he would translate the Lord's Prayer into Arabic. And whenever he would send the Quran, they would think he would send the Lord's Prayer. So, and a lot of other things that he was able to do. Of course, some of his work are still out there, and I hope somebody somewhere will be able to bring them alive and get them on earth for study. Yes, that's, yeah, this is a book about Umar Said, which is supposed to come up. It's going to be probably later this year, we hope. It's going to be a fascinating thing. Yeah, this, some of the things that Umar Said did, Al-Qutb al-Muqaddasa, Qutb al-Ahad al-Atiq fi al-Ahad al-Jadid. Yeah, on that side, you see the Lord Prayer. And you can see what he did. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Sayyidina Muhammad. So, and that is the opening part of Christian Lord Prayer, which was called, he was trying to put, and it also shows you the level of understanding then. If somebody could translate English language into Arabic, this is the Lord Prayer here is quite, and there are quite a lot of others like that still waiting in the United States or South America or Bahia that are still waiting to be explored. Now, this particular one is, now, in the Nigerian system, we have this kind of collaboration even between Muslims and non-Muslims when it comes to scholarship about religion. This one you have here, well, I think it's wrongly placed. I can do that correctly. Anyway, it's the word of God. You have it both in Arabic and of course the local language. So this is something that, and at a point in time, the Ford Foundation was trying to assist to revive this tradition and to, but unfortunately, you can see what happened. This was in 2007, almost how many years ago now? Almost 13 years or thereabout. So most of these materials we are now talking about in the Nigerian context almost dying out completely. And this was the lamentation of somebody 2007, and we are now in 2023. And that is why I say it is not time for us to bring this up and to salvage whatever is still there to be salvaged. And this is the Center for Arabic Documentation at the University of Ibadan, Institute of African Studies. You can see it's almost locked up now. Now, what we have here is the microfilm, some of the manuscripts that were collected several years ago. And you can see because of the humidity in the environment there, most of these things are no more readable at all. They are destroyed. And of course, you have some sort of photocopies of the original somewhere, half saved, not completely destroyed. And I think it's something that calls for attention. Nobody deals any longer with microfilms or microfilm any longer these days. We are talking of digitization now. And that is one thing we want to draw attention to. Now, you can see the old microfilm reader that was still in use some 6-7 years ago. And some of the students at the Center Institute of African Studies at the University of Ibadan still trying to read the hardly readable or legible stuff. So on that, that center used to publish some journals, what's called Majalatul Buhuth, which was also founded by John Honwick when he's at the University of Ibadan. But that one has also stopped publication now for obvious reasons. So now, the crux of my presentation is to draw attention to this heritage, which is almost dying out now. Now, unless something is done, and in good time too, we may lose the almost 4,500 something, not only in Nigeria, but across the Sudanic African region. And I think the desirability for digitization It's what University of Chicago. Of course, we know something that fascinates me very much is that the Oriental Institute here in Chicago, there used to be a professor called Nabia Abbott. I think the one died several years ago. Nabia Abbott was able to work on papyri in several areas of Quranic studies, hadith, and several things. And her work, in spite of the age, remains classic up to today. So at that situation, we also want us to have that. Okay, let us have all this manuscript. Let us have all these archival materials also restored. And we can have students, either graduate students or whatever, who can now get engaged in restoring the manuscript and also using those materials as sources of new knowledge and as sources of new, generating new facts about various aspects of history, medicine, and several other areas. Most of these manuscripts that we have are in that particular, in several fields, which we think we should. Now, Timbuktu used to be equated only with manuscript. Of course, there is a very large, very big project about the resuscitation of the manuscript in Mali, the Timbuktu manuscript. And of course, we all heard what happened during the invasion of the Tuaregs and the people who attacked the place and scattered the way or even destroyed many of these things. So there's a particular person, Abdul Qadir Haidara, in Mali, Timbuktu to be precise, who was able to salvage most of these things, more or less smuggled, quote unquote, smuggled them out of their various locations and brought them to safety. But there are several thousands of similar manuscripts as well. You can see the way they are now, they are almost hardly legible. And if care is not taken, they are not preserved, they will die out completely. So I was involved at the point in time of this manuscript, but people tend not to know that there are several manuscripts also outside Timbuktu, specifically in Nigeria, the southwestern part of Nigeria and the northern part of Nigeria, which I think we should now have a sort of program of study and get graduate students or even undergraduate students to be dedicated to not only studying these materials, but also salvaging them, preserving them, and getting them digitized. Otherwise, we are going to lose a lot of material. So now, there is one particular individual now who's involved in a solo effort. His name is Ismail Jima, more or less the only expert left in this field now at the University of Ibadan. And he has been doing a lot of work in terms of the field, several areas of the Arabic manuscript. And I think it's going to be worthwhile. I just talked to Professor Shamsuddin before I came here that we need to do something very positive and in good time too, which will be sustainable to ensure that all this heritage that we have here are sustained. All these heritage are preserved and then made to serve as the new sources and media of knowledge, not only about Africa, but also about the world. Because many of the manuscripts that have come across also have to do with some diplomatic relationship. And at the point in time, some of the, even in the diaspora, for example, in Brazil, the Bahia, you have a number of Africans, especially Nigerians or Yorubas, who had been settled there since the 18th century after the 1853 war. And many of them still write the local languages there using the Arabic character. And these are quite fascinating. So I've tried to write about some of these things that have been done by an individual. And I think it's going to be interesting to make sure that we have something. Remember, there was this collection by John Honwick, who donated his materials to the University of Ibadan. But of course, the university could not afford the money to transport those material from Northwestern to Nigeria. But luckily for us, the thing got now transferred to the University of Lagos. So we have a rich supplement who is there to unearth and use those materials for study purposes. And I think this is worth looking into. Yeah, this was John Honwick, about whom I was talking about earlier on. Yes, but luckily for us, there is a group of young university graduates who have come together now. They call themselves Muntada Ulama Islam, which was founded some 3 years ago. They are engaged in studying the works by local clerics, local authors, not only in the area of formal Arabic, but those who are using the Arabic language or Arabic script to document local languages. So you have what we call the Ajami, for Hausa, for Yoruba, for Nufe, for many several languages across the world anyway. Any language that uses the Arabic character to document it, Swahili, Urdu, whatever, that is called Ajami. And there's a large material of that now, even those that are in bilingual or multilingual something. Yeah, I came across some writing by some people from Senegal, it's a Qasida, about the Second World War, in which Hitler was being chastised or even cursed for, and of course this was written in Arabic letters, but the language is Wolof. And there are several others like that, which of course is going to give us the African dimension or African perspective or African narrative about world events. So if we do not, we should not allow all this heritage to die away, and there should be a sort of sustained program or partnership, so to say, between universities here or centers here, so that we can have a way of studying these materials and, of course, utilizing them for greater studies. Thank you very much.
Fascinating and new information for most of us, I think. We have plenty of time for questions and discussion. So would you like to field questions or would you like me to moderate?
Well, if you ask questions, I can answer them if I take notes. If they ask.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So if there are questions.
They hear you better.
Okay.
At the mic.
Okay. So if there are questions, so I decided to stop because I didn't want to go into this word, what to call the beloved Brazil. There's a young man here in the United States now, Oguna Digi, who's been working on the Arabic heritage of Brazil. But I don't want to go, I say word feed by itself. So, and that's just to let you know that most of these people are also there in Brazil who are also good in manuscript studies and also using Deji Ogunaike. I can give you his details later on. Yeah. Yes, in the early part of the 20th century, to be precise, the Christian Missionary Church in Nigeria, the CMS, of course, deliberately decided to be sending their members, pastors, reverend fathers, to go and learn Arabic. But of course, the intention was not to promote Islam, but to be able to access Islamic literature to convert Muslims to Christians. So they felt that the only way they could do that is to learn the language of Islam, which is Arabic. And so they succeeded in doing that. But in the process as well, they went ahead to start collaborating with Muslims, for example, in translation of the Quran. And from 1912, I didn't show this slide, 1912, this idea of translating portion of the Quran in local language, Yoruba language, and then Arabic became very, very fashionable. And so that is the area what I call translation. And of course, in the area of the Christian prayers, for example, so they felt that, okay, once we're able to get the Muslim into anything Arabic, no, Muslim will naturally revere anything written in Arabic language. So before you know what the content is, you will have read the thing first. So there was this collaboration between the leader of that group. There was somebody called Idrisu Anima Sham from Lagos, and of course Reverend Father Ogumbi, who was a church of the CMS. So they were collaborating the translation of part of Quran and part of Lord's Prayer, and of course several other prayers. And these materials are there now published, and nothing has been done to study it at all up to now. And that can be a very good area of sort of exploring the collaboration between people of different faith in the early part of the 20th century. Yeah, that's it. Yes, these manuscripts are either in public institutions like universities, for example, or in private holdings. But it will interest you to know, you only need to go through this Arabic literature of Africa something. You can see the variety of subjects treated: law, history, medicine, every imaginable aspect. And if you've gone through the Brokelman says something, or Fuad something, and to see the even tafsir, local history, geomancy, mention it. So this manuscript are in all these areas. They are also local one in tafsir or hadith, commentaries and original works, and super commentaries also. So it covers all known aspects of Arabic-Islamic scholarship that you can think of, and that is it. So, but in most cases, many of these manuscripts, those that are not in public repositories, are kept by families, because people who anything written in Arabic is highly honored and respected. So, and incidentally, when people die, the families will divide, for example, a single volume, because they say that they feel that there's barakah. So you could have chapter 1 with son A, you could have part B with son C, because everybody wants to take part of the barakah, even if they don't know what the content is all about. So just to let you, but again, what we are saying now is that we should find a way of getting all these things together. Of course, if you get children from those families to work on those manuscripts, the family member will be willing to give out those things, since they know that nobody will take those things away, and then get them digitized. But again, we can work on the existing list or the existing titles that we know of and decide, because, okay, let us work first, maybe on African history, or let us work on particular African medicine. And of course, it might also interest you that even prison notes, many of them wrote prison notes or war notes during Second World War or whatever in various areas, multilingual ones, bilingual ones, and all these things will still be there. So they cover all subjects. That's that one. And of course, the Arabic literature of Africa thing, which I've just showed later on, 4,565 pages, will give you the title, the author, and the location of all this manuscript. Yes. Well, you see, most of those pre-17th or even sometimes 18th century, most of them have not survived. Because, I mean, once there's no printing culture and you have the manuscript tradition in place, somebody copying, another copying. So, and interestingly, there was a copying industry in Borno, Kanem Borno, that's from the 15th, 16th century, where you had centers where copying was a vocation, so to say. But most of those work had not survived because of, but I want to tell you that, yes, quite a lot of original works, as I said, on various aspects of Islam, even tafsir had emerged from, and I can cite several instances. See, for example, Uthman Danfodio's family, the Fudiawa, 3 of them alone, you have over 300 titles of work attributed to them on all aspects of Islamic culture, history, medicine, mention it. And they were for sort of a composing work, not only in Arabic, but also in local languages. Because of the preaching, they had to do some preaching as well. So you want to preach to local people in the language they understand. So, and that was the origin of the qasida, local qasida, whereby the language, they use the local languages to preach and also to compose Arabic language. So it's a very, very common, you have original work, of course, you also have commentaries on classical works and super commentaries. Go ahead. East African what? I didn't get a question. Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, it's very simple. See, some of these things that we now, this manuscript we now have are treating various aspects of Islamic or Arabic culture. What we need to do now is to ensure that we create a platform for it to be part of the curriculum in the university system, for example, now. Manuscript, or what we call manuscriptology now, how do they, what are the various scripts that we have? What are the various ways to preserve? What are the various ways that you can think of? So either to study them as objects by themselves, or to study them as sources of knowledge. So this is very, very important. For example, you could create courses within the university system whereby students will be made to have interest in the nature of manuscript itself. I mean, for example, what about binding? Binding is some sort of a technical something. What about ink that is used in copying? What about the materials or the bookmarks, for example? So all these are aspects of manuscript studies. But what I'm interested in is, okay, what about all these manuscripts that we now have that are rotting away and that are not being used to study at all? So let us find a way of classifying or even having a list of what we have in the first instance, then design a sort of curriculum that will make people access even the reading, because you have to be taught in the art of reading those manuscripts. So it's a different world entirely. It's not the one that the kind of writing you have in the typing something that you are, the printing industry that you're going to have in the manuscript something. So it is very important that the university system, especially at this point, to have a common foundation or a fund that will assist the study of this manuscript in the first instance, and of course to promote those items as sources of new knowledge across board. So that is very, very important. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I think you have a very valid point there. But the thing is that even the facilities to digitize itself is not there in the first instance. I remember some years back, the American ambassador, I talked about Ford Foundation in 2007. And the American ambassador to Nigeria there was very, very much passionate about getting the, what we call the Ariwa House manuscript digitized. And the project was on, and we were trying to prioritize, okay, we cannot do the whole thing at a single swoop. Now, once the man left, there was no continuity. Nobody was interested any longer in doing that. That was because the project was tied to individuals rather than an institution. So if to get this kind of project done properly, it has to be institutionalized, tied to an institution. So regardless of whoever is there, the job will still be on. And I think the best way to do that, since universities have the personnel or the expertise to do that in the first instance, so we can say that, okay, fine, between University of Chicago, for example, and Fountain University, let us identify particular manuscript in particular area. We can say, okay, let us go to area of African history, or let us go to the area of African medicine and see what manuscript do we have in this area, sort them out, got those ones digitized, right, and then make them to be subject of study. You can make it to be, okay, for your master's degree, you need to edit or translate, whatever. So this is the only way. By doing that, you will have preserved the original source, of course, regardless of whatever happens to the original, which of course has now been digitized, that will still be available all over the whole world. And the owner will not have any problem sort of any longer, because the fear is that in most cases in the past, when people gave out the original of their manuscript, they hardly get them back again. So that fear was there. And so but once it is digitized and the access is made possible, then it can be used to study all over. So that is one area. But the question of funding will not be problematic any longer once we have access to it in digital form. Yeah. Okay, great. And then. Okay. Yes, I think coming back to the last question, I want to address that first. How does the printing culture affect the manuscript tradition? Yeah. See, what happens now is that for a single, you are talking of Maliki, for example, a popular work of Maliki is Risala of Qayrawani or Mukhtasar of Al-Khalil. You could have several versions or codices of that particular thing in various hands. And again, some might be even more complete than the others when it comes to commentaries. So, and manuscript remains something that is highly valued. And I think it will be very much, even in the published versions that we have this day, you could have a single work. The editor will say, okay, in so version, this is the word there. In B, this is what I said, but I think this is better. So having many manuscript codices will also improve and enhance even editing work. So once you have about several versions of a particular work, you can see where this is added or where something is missing. So of course, as at now, it wouldn't really affect the quality of the printing work. As a matter of fact, it's going to enhance it and make the job easier. And also make available some of those other works that are not readily accessible even now. So that is one. Yes, your question on the first one, whether the knowledge of Arabic went beyond the first generation, it's as good as asking whether even those now that we have it today, immigrants from several parts of the world, let's say Nigeria, for example, whether their children can even speak their mother tongue today is a question you want to ask, which is answer absolutely very, very hard to say. So the knowledge of Arabic wouldn't have gone beyond the first generation because we do not have any evidence of them teaching their children or their words the language which, of course, they also learned, So apart from losing even their own mother tongue, they probably will have even lost also the Arabic, which they were not even willing to, or they were not teaching their children as well. So I will assume that the knowledge didn't go beyond the first generation, but that was still need to be investigated. Okay, so, Tom. Okay. Okay. Well, I think they can be a text, or it can be sent by text or yeah. Somebody was trying to ask. Okay. While we are waiting for the Zoom one to. Well, I think the starting point will be to get this manuscript edited first. Once you get them edited, and then you can access, just like this Umar said, stuff you just mentioned about now, it's going to be a good material for scholarship and also to trace the history of people and whatever. So it's a good idea that the manuscript tradition is maintained, and people also learn how to read those materials. So it's a good thing that if it is made to be a course within the university system of training people to learn to read it, is going to be very, very helpful. And that is one thing that we should encourage. Do we still have the Zoom person? Any question again?
Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. I just had a question about Nigeria, actually. I wanted to know which Nigerian tribe has the strongest roots in the Arabic language, and what prevented an established scholarship in Nigeria for studying and speaking Arabic?
Which Nigerian tribe has the strongest roots in Arabic? Well, let me put it this way to you. In terms of the coming of Islam to Nigeria, of course, the northern part of Nigeria happened to have been the first to be in contact with Islam. And of course, wherever Islam went, Arabic language also went with it. And I can tell you for sure that from the 10th century up to 1903, when the British colonial power overran the country, Arabic language was the language of the court, the language of the judiciary, and of course, the language of transaction. So the Arabic tradition has been very, very long, has a deep root in the northern part of Nigeria. And that is a number of records that we still have in the courts and palaces and even correspondence. As a matter of fact, in the 13th century, there was a hostel for Nigerian students in Al-Azhar in Cairo. So just to let you know the kind of relationship that existed from time in Borno, Kano, Katsina. In the southern part of Nigeria, Yoruba land to be precise, the contact with the Arab world or the Arabic scholarship there didn't go back was just late as 18th to 19th century. And that was through people going to Hajj or businesses and things like that. So I can tell you that the tradition is actually older and firmer in the northern part of Nigeria historically. Yeah.
Okay, and so was it colonization that prevented establishing a scholarship? Was that what hindered the spread of the Arabic language in Nigeria?
I didn't get that one. What was it?
I said, was it colonization? Yeah, was that the reason that hindered the Arabic language from continuing to flourish in Nigeria?
Well, it was an issue because at a point in time, people who were able to read Arabic were considered as illiterate. And at a point in time, some of the colonial masters, they were, you see, as I said, even the local languages were rendered in, were written in Arabic script. So they were called bastard Arabic. So everything was done to sort of stigmatize the Arabic language. And those who were even knowledgeable in it, either as scholars, they were considered as illiterate because they were not writing in Latin script. So, of course, colonization did a lot. And not only for Arabic, but even for the judicial system, because before the advent of colonialism, the language of administration, the language of the court, even the sphere of judiciary covered all aspects of life. But once colonialism came, it limited it only to personal matters. And that was the danger that we had then. So colonialism did a lot to reduce the influence of Arabic or the propagation of the language, even up to today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, question.
Hello. Hello, can I ask this question?
Hold on. Leiden is not, University of Boston, for example. Boston, USC is dealing with Ajami project with Falun Gong. Professor Falun Gong of University of Boston has been doing a lot of work on the Ajami something. And of course, in Nigeria, we have Professor Muhammad Jimba from Kwara State University also dealing with Ajami. And Hamburg is dealing precisely with African materials, not necessarily about Ajami stuff. Ajami has to do with languages that are written in Arabic characters, but they're not Arabic. So that's one. Yeah. Yes, the British Library, for example, has what we call the EAP, Endangered Archives Project, which has been funding a lot of manuscripts, something that, something, not only manuscripts, but materials or archives that are under threat. And what I'm trying to suggest now is that if the thing is done at the global level now, for example, now, because of technical know-how and international standards, the thing is going to move faster. At a point in time, in 2007, I was talking about the British Council Officer, Consul General in Nigeria. I brought him to one of the Nigerian universities. The oldest university in Nigeria has just one digitizing equipment, one. And that was even being used for historical material of the colonial period. So, but the story would have been different if we now have the kind of facilities just like we have in the Timbuktu project now, which is being funded by Andrew Mellon, kind of thing, a lot of resources, personnel, training. So that is non-existent now. And that is why I decided to bring it here, because of what I know of the tradition in Chicago here. And look, can we have a program of not only digitization, but also working on this manuscript preservation and use them as object of study, so we can have new regime of knowledge based on materials that are derivable from the manuscript. Yeah. Okay. University. Training. Okay. The interest that I just mentioned about a group of young individuals that in 2021, about 3 years ago, they formed, it's called Muntada Ulama. So these are young university products who are interested in dealing with manuscripts. So, but their efforts are limited only to preserving those things. They don't have the resources to ensure the preservation of those things. And the only way to generate interest, first of all, is to train in the language of those manuscripts, because these are peculiar. Even to writing of this manuscript, you need to learn the script in the first instance. So that is the basic thing. So, and if people are quite knowledgeable about the content of the manuscript, of course, the interest will be there again to preserve and to conserve those things. So the starting point would be, let there be a curriculum to learn the script itself, and then the interest will be generated among others as well. So at the moment, because of the difficult nature of the manuscript, many of them are hardly legible. So it's already dampening the interest. If you have something that you cannot even access very well, so it can be very frustrating. So making sure that those things are preserved or restored, restoration is going to be a very good something, right? And then we can follow up from there. Okay. You've lost the contact? No, okay.
Yes, can I speak?
Go ahead.
Yes, I thank Professor Hamid. This is Dr. Dahoud. Yes, I want to recall that there was a time in the late 1970s and early 80s that I worked in the University of Ibadan Library, that is map and manuscript section. I was in charge of typing the Arabic materials. I want to recall that there was one Mr. Udularu. I know that Prof. Hamid can remember the name of that person.
He's dead now, from 10 years ago.
Yes. What happened to all those materials? Because in that section, you have a lot of materials that I personally worked on. And I am afraid at that time, no attention, no serious attention is paid on the materials there. So I want to know what happens to those materials now.
Well, if you had followed this presentation, I showed what has been happening at that center, or Institute of African Studies, Center for Arabic Documentation, even as of 2017, more or less closed down. And most of those materials that were in microfiche or microfilm almost illegible any longer, so they are done. And some of the manuscripts themselves that were in hard copies are either becoming blotted or or by getting humid. So that is where this SOS was sold. I'm saying, look, whatever we have remaining now, let us save them before everything dies out. And that can be done by restoring those that can be restored. Those that are available, let us now identify them and use them as object of study and encourage students, particularly graduate students, to use them to generate new knowledge. So that's the only way. So those ones you were talking about in the 2020 something years ago are almost extinct now. And whatever remains, we need to be salvaged. And that is the object of this interaction, to draw attention that, look, out there are Arabic materials outside the Arab world that are sources of all aspects of knowledge mentioned in law, medicine, history, astronomy, that are waiting to be explored and studied. But these materials are now at the verge of extinction if care and a sustained one at that is not taken. So that is it. So the one you worked with some years ago, I doubt very much whether they will still be there at all. So that's the backstory. It has to be told. Okay, Shamsuddin? Oh, well, yes. Well, I wanted to reserve. Yeah, this is the Atlanta. Well, I know there is this lady here in the US, Fiona McLaughlin. I don't know whether you know her. It's in the University of Florida. Professor Fiona has been working on Wolof language that you have written in the Arabic something. Now, this one is in the Bahia world, Brazil. And you have the Yorubas out there who also use this is one of the local warriors in the charm, the African medicine. So many of medicine, charm, juju. So the medicine, the amulets, the amulets that they use during war, you can see the instruction there that we have. Some of them are either in Arabic or in local language that you have documented in Arabic language. So it's a very common thing in the Atlantic world. But I don't want to start to overstretch ourselves. Let us focus on what is close by first before we go that further. So we have already a number of those in Africa, West Africa. We have those who are in the diaspora, the American something. And of course, the third aspect is that in the Atlantic world, in the Brazil, Sao Tome and Principe, and others like that. So just to draw attention that it's a very wide field that still awaiting cultivation. But I think we are better off by starting with what is close to us first before going further than the far field. Yeah. But they are there. Thank you very much. Thank you.